Hello again, lovely Derek, and in this mini tutorial we are going to do two different cast-ons. They are different, but they are very, very similar, and I will demonstrate that to you now. And this is a cast-on that is very similar also to the long tail cast-on without doing the long tail. Okay. So you are going to grab your yarn and you're going to start with a slip knot so that you can put it onto your needle. So I want to show you, because you do not need to have a long tail at all. Mine is always about this long, because whatever I will work on, this is what I'm going to use to weave it in. Okay, so there we are. And now that you have got your slip knot, you are ready to cast on some stitches. So I'm going to start with method, let's call it method 1. Method 1 on how to cast on these stitches, and we're going to zoom in. Yes, we are. Okay, so we're zoomed in now, and to cast on the second stitch, because of course this is our first stitch, so now we need to start casting on. It is very, very simple, honestly, and you will love it. It looks just like the long tail cast on as well. And that way you don't need to work out how much yarn you need for the long tail, right? Okay, so just like you're going to knit, insert your needle into here. And actually you do need to knit it. So knit the stitch, but don't let go of this one here. You're going to pull it up, and with your left hand needle you're going to grab the front loop here and put it onto the left needle. And tighten the yarn with your working yarn, but not too tight, because it is a stitch, and if it is too tight then you will find it is very hard to work with for your first row. You now have done your first stitch, well, your second, but your first, you know what I mean. Okay, this is stitch number 2. So let's go on to stitch number 3, and it is exactly the same step. Okay, so you're going to knit this stitch, but don't let go of your, don't, do that as if to knit. Leave the yarn onto this needle, pull it up, and with your left hand needle you're going to grab this and put it onto the left needle and tighten the working yarn, but not too tight. Remember, this is always very important, otherwise your stitches will be too tight to work with, you see. So let's do that one more time. As if to knit, you're going to knit it and then pull the yarn up, and with your left hand needle you're going to grab it just like so and let go, and then tighten the yarn, and always remember, not too tight. You've got to be able to move the stitches very nicely, just like so. So I'm going to go off camera now and do a few more stitches, and I'm going to knit a couple of rows. And why am I going to do that? Because then I'll be able to show you what the edge looks like. Okay, so I've actually done 4 rows, and I think that you can see the edge very nicely here. Do you see how nice and straight it is? And it looks just like, the long cast on method, right? It looks just the same. On the other side, this is what it looks like. And it is nice and, elasticated, but not too much, and quite nice and loose as well. And I think it is ideal for blankets and stuff like that, where it just doesn't bunch up here. It just stays nice, just like so. And there's even a nice edging here. Okay, so I'm gonna go off now, and I will be ready to do method 2. Casting on method number 2. Okay, so here is my tail, and I'm going to leave a little bit as usual. I'm going to create a slip knot. And I'm going to leave that slip knot, and now I am ready to cast on. So to start method 2, we're actually going to start with method 1 for the very second stitch. Grab your working yarn, not the tail, because I just did that and that was a gigantic mistake, okay? So make sure you grab your working yarn. Okay, so that was the post. I don't know if you heard the flip-flop. That was the post. Okay, so you are going to start the second stitch just like you are going to work the first method. I will explain to you why in a little minute. So create that second stitch. And now that you have your second stitch, we are going to actually work between the stitches, okay? Not in the stitch, but in between the stitches. So you might find it easier to work in the stitch, but if not, you know, in between the stitches. Just see, like so here. So you're going to knit a stitch in between those stitches. And don't let go of the yarn. Pull it up and put it onto your left hand needle, just like so. Okay? Once you've done that, pull your working yarn and you've got your third stitch created. And then you're going to do that step one more time. Remember to not, pull the working yarn too hard, because you want your stitches to be nice and loose around the needle. So when you're ready to work with your stitches, they will not be too tight, okay? You could always use a bigger size needle just to do the cast on, and then, go down a size to work your normal stitches. Okay, so in between those stitches here, in the gap between the stitches, put your needle in there. And this is why it's important to not do the stitches too tight, because otherwise you might not be able to do that, okay? So knit a stitch, just like so, and pull up the yarn and put it onto the left hand needle. And with your working yarn, pull it down, but not too tight. And in fact, you might want to pull it out a little bit, just like so. So it's nice and loose. Okay? We're going to do that one more time. In between those two stitches, you're going to put your needle in here and knit a stitch. Pull your yarn and pull the needle in here and just put it back onto the needle here. And grab your working yarn and pull it down, but really not tight at all. Okay, so I'm going to let you carry on if you're doing this method, or the second, or the first, I mean. So I'm going to do a few more stitches, and I'm going to do a few rows, and I'll show you what it looks like, and then we can compare the two. Okay, so I have done 4 rows. And this is what method 2 looks like. And I will show you on the other side what it looks like too. So it is like that. And I think now it is time to compare the two together. Okay, so now we can compare the two together. And as you can see, they are just about the same. You see, this one might be a little bit tighter than this one, so you might find method 1 easier to work to the method 2. This is what they both look like, and there's a lovely little edging here too, like it created a chain. You see? It is really lovely and nice and, you know, elasticated and loose. So ideal for scarves, blankets, tops, and whatever you want to do. So it doesn't bunch up at the bottom like you might find in certain cast-ons. So this is really nice. So, and of course you don't have the nightmare of having to work out how much yarn to do for the long tail, right? You can just go along and create as many stitches as you need, and it looks pretty neat. Okay, so that's it really. This is the end of this little tutorial. I hope it was helpful, and talk very soon.